successful introverts take that next step and they have what's called a focused conversation. So it can be back and forth. And your conversation with the salesperson, once you have a good sense of what some of the issues are, you might throw out a solution or say, bring in something you did with another client if it's appropriate, if it's going to keep the focus on that person, not to be bragging. But it is a way, and you may agree with this, Michael, I don't know, to show your expertise.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is a globally recognized speaker, executive coach, and author whose pioneering work in introverted leadership featured in top media and trusted by organizations like GE, NASA, and Boeing. She has helped introverts thrive in leadership roles across industries and continents. Jennifer Kahnweiler, welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you for editing my bio. I like what you did.
Yes.
Summarized it well.
We tried to get a lot into a very little, and that's sometimes difficult to do, but we had our ether friends in the AI world help us. So,
thank you,
yes.
Mr. and Mrs. ChatGPT or whoever.
Yes, the ChatGPT is amazing for taking quick things like that or massive things and bringing them down into something very, succinct and honestly, the one sentence paragraph doesn't do justice for the work that you've done.
Oh, thank you.
All over the place, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. And it's such a great topic for our audience because often. We've had a guest on to talk about the difference between being introverted and am I introverted, am I extroverted, am I ambivert, all that. But, it's a conversation that happens a lot. Right. And you've spent a lifetime here kind of getting to this point and building your expertise around it. So let's jump into it. And the first question I always like to ask is, how did you end up doing what you're doing?
Well, that could probably take up the whole time.
Yeah, we could do several episodes on that, I'm sure.
I'll put it into ChatGPT and say...
Yeah, put it into Chat. We'll just let that ChatGPT do the whole
nobody will know, right,
us.
that it's not my voice. Well, hopefully we're not at that point, but we kind of are, right?
Not yet.
No, the only thing I would add to the intro is that, I'm a podcast host now. I like to identify myself as that too, like you. So I totally get... this is a way to get the message out. We have a podcast called Introvert Ally.
Okay, nice.
So how did I get to this? Right. I started actually writing about this, Michael, and this topic of introverted leadership, which is really kind of my niche, as maybe the Canadians say and Europeans say. Back in 2008, I had a long journey as a married spouse to an introvert. I'm more extroverted. I learned that a few years into our relationship, and it helped me tremendously. And I think if you would ask Bill, most of the time it helped him as well, my husband. So on a personal level, I was very committed to kind of sharing this understanding, that it helped us communicate to understand why, he would then kind of like recharge a lot. And I didn't understand why was he so quiet. And, I would do all the things that extroverts do that kind of are because we don't know. It's what's wrong? Nothing was wrong. So I learned about this difference in wiring, and it was fascinating to me. And I took that interest in that understanding, particularly through using the tool, the Myers-Briggs, like a lot of us were introduced to, and was gaining momentum in the 80s and the 90s, to use that tool as one way in to coach and to counsel many of my introverted clients, which, as we know, 40 to 60% of any organization is made up of. And I would think in the world of bookkeeping, it's probably higher than that. The people behind the scenes, who do incredible work, but aren't always recognized, oftentimes overlooked, ignored, misunderstood. So having this tool or this this understanding, and it was not overnight, but it was a process. People would really, sit up in their chairs in a more confident way. They would start to understand themselves and what they needed, that recharging the battery time, so that they could be more effective team members and also explain to others in their world. That was really key. This is what I need, whether it was to their bosses or their teams. So I started seeing this happen and see a lot of really positive outcomes from people taking ownership of introversion. And it still is a challenge for a lot of people. It's still seen as kind of a pejorative in some circles, but that's changing the workplace culture. So one thing led to another. I wrote the first book, The Introverted Leader. We're now in your third edition, which I think we'll talk about today a little bit about the changes. So it's been really a gift for me to have been there in the kind of the beginning of what I call the introvert revolution, or the movement to more understanding of introversion, not as a label, but as a lens to look through, to understand. And so, I started writing about it, and I had have had a great partnership with my publisher. And now 4 books later, we're still having conversations. It's used as a tool in many organizations to open up the dialogue about this topic and create not just understanding from a communication standpoint, but better results. So that's kind of the story.
And the introverted leader, so this all started based on your relationship with your husband. That was the primary starting point. And you discovered that's amazing, really. And how long ago did this all start? Like
with Bill, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, well, you can't believe it. I mean, I can't believe it. We've been married 52 years.
52 years.
We met as sophomores in the college dorm at Washington University in St. Louis. And I was very attracted to his quiet, calm energy. I came from a Northeast, very talkative, extroverted family and culture. And so, opposites attract, right? But then after a while, what draws us to people also can drive us a little frustrating, a little crazy. So the calmness, which a lot of extroverts will say, it was like, what's going on in there? So it really helped me to open up the window. Yeah, I think a lot of our work, when we're passionate about something, I kind of call it a calling now, I guess. It starts from the personal, don't you think? I mean, it begins...
Well, I think so, but I think this is... I don't know that I've heard something. There's definitely cases, but this is like a pinpoint. A pinpoint of a birth of something that you took your life onto, and it's a pinpoint. It's a relationship with your husband. Nothing else. Not like, I was studying here, and then I went there, and I kind of had this and that and everything else.
Yeah.
This was like, wow, this birth, this body of work that you've been working on for over 50 years. And you're an expert, not only theoretically and academically, but also personally. You've been working and walking along a partner, your introverted husband. So it just increases in my mind the depth of knowledge. It's not just, it's applied and it's also studied. So yeah, it's really cool. I love the backstory to that.
Thank you for that, just that perspective. I mean, I think I've always been very careful to, maybe like a caveat to people, that I will never know exactly what it's like to feel like an introvert. First of all, there's not one type of introvert, right? There's many introverts as there are people in the world, but I really try to approach this topic in addition to my personal revelations, and that was very key, as you pointed out. It was really more as a journalist too, like understanding, getting out there, embedding myself in organizations and really listening. Which helped me, by the way, to develop that side of myself, because, extroverts can all use a little bit more listening. And so that really helped me to really go from that perspective. And I think the biggest compliment I had was I think it was on the second book, a woman came up to me and said, you really get me. And I thought, that's really the mantra I want to kind of go with. Like, I want people to understand that I get what they're saying. I can't be them, but I can translate kind of the pain and the successes that they're having.
We'll get back to the interview right after this word from our sponsor. Tired of juggling manual admin and everyday practice tasks when you'd rather be nurturing more valuable client relationships? With the new Sage for Accountants, you can automate daily tasks and unlock not only more efficiency, but more time for valuable client collaboration with all the tools you need, including accounting, payroll, client management, and more, all in one place. Get real-time reports to make informed decisions, eliminate hours of paperwork, and say hello to stress-free bookkeeping and practice management with a centralized solution backed by expert human support. Learn more about the new Sage for Accountants or get started for free at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com/sage. Thank you for hearing from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. So The Introverted Leader, that was your first book. You wrote that back in, how long is that book?
2009, 10. I think
2009.
2009 or 10. I always forget that. But we had two editions. So the third edition just came out in 2025.
Wow.
And,
congratulations. That's
thank
this
you.
year.
Yeah, that was just came out a
We're
few
halfway
months
through 2025.
Yeah, it was late June it came out. So we're
Okay.
happy to have people take a look.
Yeah.
And I wasn't planning on writing a third edition. You know, every book kind of presents itself. The topic presents itself. And so the second had Introverted Leader, and then people would say to me, well, yeah, leadership skills are definitely part of what I'm looking to develop, but I really need to influence, you know, in the workplace. I need to challenge thinking. I need to get my projects listened to, you know, all of these things across the organization. And I'm not the kind of person that's going to shout from the rooftop. So how do I do that? And this is true in all the books I write. It's like, how do I do that? Tapping in to my strengths, not becoming an extrovert. So I wrote the second book, Quiet Influence, which was The Introvert's Guide to Making a Difference. So using,
beautiful.
I did read, and every one of my books, I do quite a bit of like qualitative research. I do interview surveys and say, you know, what are you using to have that project succeed? You know, that kind of thing. So it was across the organization. Then the third one, the readers would say to me, okay, well, I'm getting these skills, you know, and I would do a lot of speaking is really my ace in the hole here. So I would talk to audiences and listen to readers, and they said, you know, I need to get along with my extroverted teammate. So that was the genius of opposites.
Amazing.
You know, and so that was really interesting, honing in on, you know, partnerships in business and all kinds of settings in the workplace that work, people that are opposites, and how do they not drive each other crazy, but really 1 + 1 is more than 2. It's exponential when it's really working. And then the final one came out right before COVID, but I still think it has a lot of relevance now. And that's creating introvert-friendly workplaces.
Yes.
And that's really so we're working on developing introverts, getting these interpersonal relationships to work. But we need to address the cultural impact. How are we creating places where people in meetings can thrive, or when you're interviewing people, the systems need to change. And that's probably the hardest part. That's the part we have, we're working on. And certainly since COVID, we've had opportunities, but we've also had challenges with that.
Yeah, for sure. The timing for that book was probably a little overshadowed by a whole bunch of other problems. And in fact, the introverts are probably celebrating at home. It's like, we're good. Yeah.
You got it.
We don't need to do anything else. We're just good. We're here.
We're good. Except, and I definitely wanted to know if that was accurate, if that was valid. Over time, and we've seen this bear out in the research, people did miss that connection and started to feel, loneliness. They started to feel like they were out of the loop, not being seen. So that's where I think we're landing a lot in companies now with hybrid situations.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's and I wanted to ask that question.
Sure.
We kind of just stumbled upon it, but because of the book came out, and I would imagine, from just the appetite for knowledge at that time, people would have been picking up books that are like, how chaos, how do we, change, someone moved my cheese. Like, it's like, oh, we're creating a workspace. We don't even have a workspace right here that we've even known in COVID. But then after the fact, I was really curious about how how the introvert, your experience of how the introvert went through COVID. And I think I definitely am an ambivert. And I would say but I get energy from both. I get energy from being alone, and I get, by myself and in my thoughts, I get energy there. But I also do get energy from being around, but it drains my battery faster when I'm around people. And so during COVID, I've been independently working since 2009. So it's like, it was no change for me
Right.
But I was very curious how other introverts and through your research, what's happened. And that's very interesting that people, it was great. It was like, probably hey, this is a pool that I'm comfortable in. This is a good temperature. We like this, even though the world's chaotic and of course all the awful things that happened during COVID. I don't want to step over that, but from a, just a shifting of the way the world worked for a short period of time. But then people became, even introverts are like, hey, I need connection. I need people. So maybe say more about, or any other surprising discoveries there?
Yeah, no, I think, and this book is being written as we're talking about how these changes are impacting not only introverts, but women, people of color, all kinds of impacts about the changing workplace. And I honestly don't think that the leaders of organizations still quite know how to manage all this.
Totally don't.
One data point I read recently was that, one company put in place a work, you have to come back, everybody has to come back to the office, and people are just not doing it. But they're working, but nothing's happening. There's no. So I think there's we're in a lot of
they're just trying to figure it out. But there was a podcast guest on recently, and she was actually talking about the science. They're doing research and science around. There is that comfortable, and I think it was three at home and 2 in the office.
Yep.
It was enough of a balance. And let's when you think about the amount of time and energy it takes to go to another physical location for anything, it's an incredible investment. And that investment is all on the side of the employee, right? And so this is from a put and take, this is a big benefit to anyone that can work from home. You're not paying for the transportation. You're not using your own time to take the transportation. So that, we're not going to take that all away from you. Who's going to want to do that? But there's incredible value inside the walls of the office. There's incredible value working next to somebody and all of that. So without that, you have this huge debt that doesn't get paid back because you don't learn as fast, you don't share knowledge as easily.
Good point.
So there's got to be this balance. So I thought that was interesting, but love to know more of what you've discovered.
No, and I think I always look at it, of course, from the introvert standpoint. One of the things that came out loud and clear, and it still, I think, is the case, flexibility. Having the flexibility to do, to schedule my time so that I'm not as stressed. And I think that's a lot for women. But I think also introverts really mention, introverted women, of course, there's many of those as well. And you probably in your field or in the field that this podcast address, we find that. So I think the flexibility was key. The chance to focus, I think that's one that came out high in terms of why do you like remote or hybrid work? But the interesting thing that's evolved too, and I heard this yesterday having coffee with a friend who's doing a hybrid, is that some people are finding they can focus better at the office if the conditions are right. They don't have all the laundry and all the other things, paying the mortgage, all that stuff that's happening at home, the kids, so you can just focus. So I think whatever work, it's really an individual kind of choice as well as what's the job and the workplace. So the workplace has to be open to this. I think the challenge in the beginning, and it's changing now, is that you don't want people coming in the office, especially the introverts were so frustrated. They'd come in and then they're on Zoom calls all day.
Yes.
Right? In the office. That's not what you want. So it's, I believe, up to the leader and the team to decide, okay, what days are we all going to be here? If there's going to be one overlapping day, that's very important, right? And how are we going to utilize that time so we have some face-to-face? How are we going to make sure, to my point earlier, that you're not connecting just with us, that we're also having a chance to bring in other people in the workplace so that we understand the context of our work, how it's impacting others, getting to know and build relationships. Because one disturbing piece of information I just read in a LinkedIn article was that senior leadership in many companies is still evaluating career opportunities and promotions for people based on FaceTime, based on seeing them. So how do we still, even if we're not coming in every day, which I don't think we need to, my personal opinion, but as for introverts, how are you still one-on-one keeping up and being proactive with people that are influencers, that are mentors, that people that you want to network? One of the you talk about surprising things. One of the surprising things in our 3rd season of this podcast, Bill and I do a wrap-up session. We did, one of the things that came out was that several of our guests, more than several, I think, said, if it's to be, it's up to me. That was kind of the theme. So I can't just as an introvert say, oh, I'm introverted, so I need to like do this. No, I have to push myself, not so it's excruciating, but like do something that's comfortable for me. I'm reaching out to, 2 people this week that I haven't talked to in a few months, and maybe set up a time so I can prepare some questions. Do it in a way that works for you, but be intentional about it. Because if all we do is continue to work on our jobs and our tasks, we're not going to get those opportunities. We're not going to, as you say, learn and grow. So I think it's really important that everybody takes responsibility for that.
I agree. There's some interesting things coming out of all of this, and like you said, and honestly, it's one of those things that kind of slips my mind as well. It's that all of that was such a major shift, and the people are just learning about it, trying to figure it out. And and then you topple on this whole shift now with artificial intelligence and what's happening to the workplace. And I mean, it's like one shift after another shift, and things will change. I mean, that's the world is rapidly changing, and you add all of this, it's just going to change even further. So it's like learning how to change quickly and adapting.
Learning how to change. Yeah, and also being aware that you do have to make a case for yourself, too. So keep data, if your company is pushing back on working from home, you want to keep a record of the kind of production, just like we would always recommend to people with performance reviews. Don't leave it up to the manager to guess what you're doing, like how productive you are on certain days. You can really make a case for that. I remember back in the day when before people did part-time and I had my second child, and I was like, I can't do 5 days a week. I got to ease into this. I mean, they expected me to come back in 2 months, it was like, what?
Right.
And I had a management position. It was crazy. And so I remember making a case, and I was shocked that it worked. I told them how I would manage my time, and, and then I would recommend that to my clients. But you can't just expect managers to know.
For sure. And that's probably a little bit of the book where you're helping introverts get their projects across, is that this is where introverts perhaps would not get those opportunities as they're not bringing them forth, perhaps. Or I'd love to know a little bit about that. And I think that's, we're talking a lot about the workplace and large organization in and out. Definitely our listeners, they have staff that want to work from home. They have a staff full of likely introverted, siding on that scale, on that spectrum of being an introvert, because it's a bookkeeping firm, predominantly female. So everything you're talking about is probably ringing bells over there on our listener side. But how do they? I mean, what's interesting is, growing up, it's almost like this was a saying. It probably was, and I don't know that it was, but it's like, how do I be more extroverted? Versus geez, how do I become more introverted? It's amazing how that's such a shift, right? It's like, you don't hear that. It's like, gee, I'd like to be more introverted. You don't hear that often, or I haven't.
Guess what, Michael? People have been saying that recently to me. I'm in total.
I think it's good, because it's why wouldn't you want to have that superpower?
Totally. So people, you mentioned earlier about my personal, incentive for going into this work. And I always laugh because, at the end of talks, people come up to me like, oh, I'm telling these great, giving these great ideas, blah, blah, blah. And they always want to know about my husband. They talk to me about their son or their brother they can't relate to who's introverted, So it's always very personal. But interestingly enough, it's because introversion is so in the news, people make jokes. People are actually coming out who are famous, like Oprah. I'm an introvert. So people are getting permission for that. Oh, it's cool to be an introvert. So I've had people actually tell me recently, well, I'm really not extrovert. And you're like, they are. But they said, I'm really, they see it as almost negative. And you're right. I think it's actually, we maybe need to go to the other side before we can kind of.
It's definitely opening up. I think it's that part of that is people embracing it and sharing about it. And it's becoming to be where when people know themselves, they can stand in that and be like, well, that's what I am. and then let's figure out how we make the most of that and leverage the strengths that come along with whatever we are, and basically live more truthfully, I guess, in our space, and that becomes more healthy for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's just an interesting one that the world used to revolve around. Oh, I need to be a gregarious person and be out there in the world and work a party, work a room, all that sort of things. It's so kind of mythical in a way, which our listener being siding on that side. And I mean, everybody's different. And like you said, there's enough, every introvert, there's enough different introverts as there are people in the world, you said,
right,
which is interesting to note as well. But from your books and from this new, and that's maybe the next question is, and I've kind of gone off all the questions, but we've had fun conversation here, which is, okay, you wrote another edition of The Introverted Leader. What prompted that? We know you wrote the different books to solve these different, basically pathways. It's like, this is how I be a leader as an introvert. This is how I get my introverted, if I'm an introvert, and how do I get my projects across?
Right.
How do I build a workplace as an introvert or a more friendly one? How do I work with extroverts? Like, you've covered the bases here, but now you've got another edition of this book. What prompted that?
Yeah, this was prompted by my editor calling me and said, I think we need to do a third edition because the book has done really well. We've sold, I think, 120,000 copies, and it's been translated into multiple languages, 14, 15 languages. So, the bottom line is important for publishers for sure. So I wasn't really planning on doing it, but I thought, what a great opportunity to take a look at life now for introverted leaders. And so the warning that my editor, Jeevan, said to me was, first of all, don't change a lot. We know the book is doing well, so we don't want to throw everything out. My tendency, Michael, is to just redevise everything. I'm a big on editing. He's like, no, we got to hold you back from that. But what I did was I took a look at what's life like now. We focused on the hybrid workplace, as we were talking about. And so a lot of lessons from what works and what doesn't, some of which we've talked about, like too much time alone, those sorts of things. So to give a guide to individuals, but also to their leaders about what they can do to create a workplace that really is inclusive for introverts so that it's a place they want to come into work, right? And how to develop themselves. So that was really the new chapter in this book. The rest of it, I was really fortunate because I was able to replace a number of the stories that are more contemporary, with more senior leaders this time too, who have come forward. I had a very hard time in the beginning getting people to go on the record, partly because they didn't really understand introversion.
Well, for sure. There's a stigma around being an introvert, which is which has opened up in the last couple of years, I guess. I don't know what was driving it. And maybe COVID was a little bit of that. People standing in there, it's like, geez, who's having a good time here? And it's like, oh, the introverts are winning here now.
Yeah, it's
right?
better, but we've got a long way to go still.
We've got a long way to go. So now you've had some big leaders in this step forward and say, hey, I'm an introvert. I'm putting up my hand, and this is how I'm. And so this sounds like a great book for our listener because they're leaders and they need to get their ideas across. They have to influence often their let's talk about their customers. They are entrepreneurs, founders, people running businesses. The entrepreneurs start a business. They're not all extroverts, 100% no. But there'd probably be, I'd be curious to get what you think the take would be on if I have customers that are business owners, entrepreneurs, am I going to be dealing with more introverts or extroverts?
I hate to give the answer that my lawyer always gives. It depends.
Yeah, it depends. What industry?
That's why this knowledge is so critical to understand. Who you're dealing with. You can identify it the more you're using this language, and it's not again to label. People say, "Oh, you're labeling." No, we're just looking at this as one pair of glasses. Think of it to look through. You also look at where the person's from. Well, you came on. I know you're from Canada. Just to have that in my mind, right? That I'm not going to be like talking about USA all the time, which I wouldn't anyway. But you know what I mean? Not now, especially.
We have lots of. We actually have more listeners in the United States, so it's okay to talk about
Okay.
We're a friendly podcast here. We are friendly to all friendly people.
Right. But no, you're asking a very good question. I think the real backbone of the book that we haven't talked about and you talk about surprises. With the first edition, I didn't realize that the model, somebody called it a formula, a framework. It's called the 4 Ps. And it's a way for people that are introverted leaders for themselves, and also as they're developing and coaching the people on their teams to be more effective. So it starts with, and all came from the work and the ideas of successful introverted leaders. They said what they do, first of all, no matter what scenario, they prepare. That's like one of the sweet spots. And you might relate to this, Michael. You don't come into any kind of situation, whether it be a meeting, a talk you're giving, a networking event, without thinking about your purpose or what you're going to, some bullet points, right? And that gives introverts an edge, by the way, because extroverts wing it. They're good at winging it, but winging it isn't always very effective. So you got preparation. Then you have presence, which is, to me, what drew me to introverts, what drew me to Bill, what drew me to the best managers I ever had who were with me when they were with me. They might have had other people in the room they needed to connect with, but when they were listening, I felt their presence. I didn't feel them looking around, who else can I talk to? That was presence. Okay, then that's because you've done the preparation, you can be present. And that's, again, any other situation we talk about that in sales with your audience, trying to build your business. You really want to hear what the client's issues are before you start pushing your product, right? And what your services are. You really want to understand what their pain is. And that's a real introvert skill, is the engaged listening. And then the third P is push. And that's the thing I talked about, stretching, having the intentional date on your calendar to contact with somebody you haven't talked to. You're really pushing yourself somewhat out of your comfort zone so that you can develop that. It's not as painful, in the future, that skill, And then the fourth one is practice, is continuing to refine your skills. A lot of people don't realize hiring involves this understanding as well, because we have implicit bias about when we even look at a resume, looking at the words on there, and how we're interviewing with somebody. Are we giving them space? As an interviewer, some people take a little longer to get their thoughts together. I was with my granddaughter buying my 9-year-old granddaughter, Millie, who's very introverted, and she was making a decision about what ice cream flavor to get. And I had to hold myself back, and let her. And I just looked over and she goes, "I'm deciding." And I'm like, that's kind of a metaphor for other people I work with. Like, I'm deciding, I'm thinking, don't push in and say, "Oh, you want this one? How about this one?" She came to her decision. It just takes a little longer.
I think my daughter and your granddaughter would get along just fine. They could shop and decide together and take as much time as they need.
As they want, right?
Oh, yeah. Or want or need.
Or they would never get out of the place.
My daughter is identical to that.
Yeah, and
how
old is she?
It's amazing. It's like she is 7. She just turned 7. And so, what you just said there is like exactly what, we'll take her to a store or whatever. And it's like, she doesn't want to walk out with the whole store. She wants to go and evaluate and make a decision. And there's nothing that can make that go any particular time. It's going to take the time that it takes, It's like...
Right, to a point, right? I mean, you can't be there all day, but...
No, for sure. But she could be, but that's just it. It's like, I'm more... but I can be with that, but I'm a little bit on other side. When you're saying the four Ps, it's like, that's me, definitely me, but there's some, kind of variable on there a little bit. And that's the personality profile of me. But it's so interesting when you know these things, the better it is. It's smoother for everyone, because if I was to go in there and try and rush her through it, no one's going to have a good time.
No, it isn't. And you are honoring her preferences. And I got to tell you, having counseled or coached so many adults who remember those times when they were pushed by teachers or by parents to not be who they are, to have to come out of their room constantly to socialize, not really honoring who the person, and I don't blame any of those parents or teachers. There's now resources, though, now that can really make a difference, because those personality preferences are shaped when we're young. So it's
That's right.
important to know that. It has a lot of implications.
That's right. That's right. And there's no right or wrong, really. It's just figuring out what your strength is and try and focus there, but also, the tools to survive in the world of the way the
Right.
world is. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't care what way you are. It's going to go the
Right.
way it's going to go. So you got to figure out how to, flow
How to
through that.
work with it.
And
Exactly.
that's, right back to our listener, right? That is understanding yourself,
Mhm.
understanding your team, understanding your clients. And that's the other thing. It was really interesting that you said about one of the P's, which is in a sales call,
Uh-huh.
listening, right?
Yeah.
Understanding. I would say that there's opportunity just from the conversations we have. Like, some do it very well, but I think that's a missed opportunity for our listeners, our community of bookkeeping owners, and I think it's more to do with their own maybe disbelief or not confident in their own expertise that
Mm.
enables them to be the confident listener and to sit in front of a business owner and ask them great questions and listen to those questions to formulate what are the problems that this person's facing, and then I can present something that will help get them on a journey to solve those problems. But they have the tools, as maybe leaning towards
Uh-huh.
more introverted people. They have the tools, they have the skill set or the personality to be able to do that. So that's a big, interesting point for our listener, which is this could be one of the great things that you're good at if you did and followed through. And maybe that needs a little bit of the P push, is to push yourself in an area that is, I'm going to push myself to be more directive and, have a conversation, lead a sales
Uh-huh.
conversation maybe. And I don't know, you tell me what your thoughts
Yeah,
are.
I think you're bringing up a great point. I had to learn this in my own sales experience, because as you say, you may have a lot of expertise. So listening, people who think listening is just passive, and we always say the word active listening. What does that mean? One thing I found with quiet influence is that successful introverts take that next step, and they have what's called a focused conversation. So it can be back and forth. And your conversation with the salesperson, once you have a good sense of what some of the issues are, you might throw out a solution or say, bring in something you did with another client, if it's appropriate, if it's going to keep the focus on that person, not to be bragging. But it is a way, and you may agree with this, Michael, I don't know, to show your expertise. Because I have gotten, gigs not expecting, I'm trying to sell them right now, but I just have an initial thought. Have you considered, or you might throw a question, have you ever considered this? So you're kind of bringing the solution in, a little bit of it.
Yes,
And they see
that's
that, she knows what she's talking about,
And that's
So-
the art, I think, of
Yes,
those conversations is
exactly.
if you haven't done the preparation work to know what are those
Right.
things, it's really living the trade and knowing what you're doing and looking at it from, and I think that's
Mhm.
part of the problem. The technician in all of them is that they're doing the work. They're thinking very hard and deeply about the technical work that they do versus
Yeah.
some of the outcomes that are happening and the differences that they've helped make. When you get
Yes.
clear about those, you can bring those
Good point.
stories in. That's part of the
Absolutely.
preparation. What are the stories? What are the things? Let me tell you about how I helped this person and the outcome that they, have you ever considered, you use great language. I love that. Hey, have you
Mhm.
ever considered this? This sounds like similar to a customer that I worked with.
Mhm.
Maybe I want to have a deeper conversation on that at
Yep.
some point. These things get to flex your expertise. And that's
I
the
love
most
that.
that is where the expertise lies for our listener. Just like your expertise is in the world of the
Mhm.
introverts and how they thrive in the world.
Mhm.
Our bookkeepers are how they help business owners thrive in the world of finance.
Oh,
And so,
so important.
if you know that and you stand in that, then wow, you can make a massive difference for these businesses and be
So
able to grow a
important.
great business.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what you're making me think about what we used to do with people when they would lose their jobs and they had started to develop their lower self-esteem, like I haven't done anything, or they would just, as you say, be caught up in the details of what they did, to really step back, to do exactly what you're saying. Write down a list, and your listeners could do this, of what have been some 10 accomplishments I've had this year. They can even be small, but there's something you're proud of. Then the next step with that is you extricate from that, what skills did it take to make that happen? What qualities did I exhibit so that I could achieve that? And it's a great kind of a back-ended way of really kind of highlighting.
I love that.
Done. Yeah, it's such a simple exercise. I forgot
one
about
other,
it now.
One other, and I would
until you
add
said
one other.
that.
Add one other frame to look at that from.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? We what did we accomplish? How did we accomplish that?
Mm-hmm.
And then why couldn't my client accomplish that?
Mm.
And that would unlock. It's like because often we discount what we know, and
Right.
we overvalue what others know, and we undervalue what we know, our capabilities. We overestimate. I think it's one of Parkinson's law or one of them. We overestimate the capabilities of others and underestimate the capabilities of ourselves. It's a human
True.
condition. But what this does is it plays on, this is why I should be here. It's like my business owner or these business owners, they don't have that skill set or that desire or that belief or that knowledge. What is that? And if you're the closer you are with, hey, this is what I do that makes this thing happen. This is the great thing that I do. And this is why others can't do it. Wow. There's a trifecta there.
I love it. We've got a new book there, Michael.
There you go.
I'll let you write it, and I'll write the endorsement. I'll write the
There you go.
endorsement.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we'll see. Hopefully they can just use that nugget and be successful without the book. So, well, this has been wonderful.
Same here.
The thing I want to say, Jennifer, is I'm looking at the wall. Many people listen to this podcast. I'm looking at the wall behind you. I'm seeing all the wonderful covers of all the books and things that you've done. And here's some, you've moved. So I see some pictures of your lovely family.
So your family is important to remember. They're there.
Yes. And anytime I have an author on, I like to remind our listener that giving a book is such a great way to acknowledge somebody, their clients. Thank you for the business. Hey, you had a really good breakthrough, or you had a tough go with your business there. Here's I thought I'd get you a gift. These are great books for yourself, listener. This should be your recommended reading. If you think you are an introvert or have any kind of introversion, you should download these on Audible. I imagine they're all there. Or get the book if you're, like reading the hardcover stuff or, non-virtual stuff. These are great books for you, but they're also great books for any leader that might be introverted. And wow, you've got over 50 years of expertise teaching this. People are asking you to write more and more about it. You're obviously one of the world's renowned experts on it.
Thank you.
I think it's an honor for us to have you here, and I think a great opportunity for our listener. So thank you
for your endorsement. For sure, a lot of our books are pass-alongs, and I couldn't be happier that we get the word out. That as we continue to have this rolling wave of the introvert revolution, that we have more quality in our lives and our workplaces. And you've asked fabulous questions, Michael. I don't say that to every podcast host.
Thank you.
As my dad used to say, you're my favorite oldest daughter. I wouldn't say that to you, my favorite podcast host. No, but you definitely rank in the top there. So
thank you.
Been
That's very nice.
Total pleasure. And I'm looking forward to listening. I've been listening to some of your episodes, and I'm learning a lot. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. I appreciate it. I always say it's easy to interview great people. So
thank you.
There you go.
And people can reach me in case that might have been
Let's
a follow-up.
talk about that. Yes. I imagine you have all sorts of resources and pathways
keep it
to
easy.
you.
Right. Well, keep it easy. LinkedIn is one good way. I also, on my website, I do have, all of the books have sample chapters. If you go to the books page that people can download to decide, if they want to buy the book, figure out which book to buy. We also, if you go on any of those pages, you'll see a link to download to sign up for our newsletter, which you can keep or not keep, and get a copy of this new quiet journal that we developed that's in conjunction with the book, which is a self-reflective tool. So I think people will find that helpful.
I think so. I think that's some great resources, and we'll have the link in the show notes. But if you want to just give the website out so we know what that is as well. Sure.
It's my name. It's Jennifer, Jennifer, Kahnweiler, Kahnweiler. .com. So it's just my name. If you just Google me, the website will come up, and it's pretty easy to navigate. And we have lots of other resources on there, tons of podcast interviews and all kinds of good stuff. And Michael's will be going up there too.
Thank you. Well, that'd be great. And we'll have the link to that. If people missed that, we'll have the link in the show notes so they can get there. And we just, on behalf of our listeners, Jennifer, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure is all ours. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.